ladies, welcome back to another episode of the Balancing Hormones Naturally podcast. We have an awesome guest for you. So I brought on Krysta Lewis, who is the owner and founder of ayz-ling Organics, which is one of the makeup companies that I talked about when we talked about the switch and ditch for makeup. And so if you are very confused, you can go back and listen to that episode. We talked all about ingredients. So I really wanted to bring Krysta on because if you watched that episode, it was me stumbling over scientific words going like, you don't want this in your makeup, but I can't pronounce it. So let's get someone who knows a little bit more about this and the importance of makeup. So I would love for you to introduce yourself and give a little bit of background with why you got on the non-toxic makeup journey. I know a little bit about your journey with autoimmune and you needed gluten-free products, but I'd love for you to share it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. It is truly such a pleasure. I've been on a hormonal journey myself for many years. And so it's cool kind of connecting with an audience that really cares about that subject and how it can be intertwined with makeup and the products that you're using. And so my story is quite interesting. I grew up in the beauty industry. My family owned a large beauty supply distributor. And so my childhood was hair shows to business meetings to all of the sorts. And then in 2010, they sold the company to L'Oreal. And so there is big beauty in my background. Mm-hmm. And my way of sort of rebelling against my family was everything was hair focused. So I naturally went to makeup.
Oh, okay.
And so for many years, I was someone who was just naturally taught when it came to the artistry of it and something that I was just very interested in. And when I went to college, I actually went to be a TV host, believe it or not.
Oh.
And while I was in school, I had pretty severe migraines and nausea. And I was on this journey to figure out where, why those were happening, what was the root cause of all of it. It's just something that I truly believed. And even being outside of Boston, where there's phenomenal healthcare, I really wasn't getting the answers that I thought I deserved. It was more so like, oh, just take an antidepressant or,
Yes.
All of these like alternatives where I'm like, I mean, I understand that. And there is, there's a place and there's a time for those things, but there's something that's causing this. It came out of nowhere. And so what is that cause? And it was one morning that I was sitting at my little makeup counter and I was staring at the back of a foundation bottle as I was applying my makeup. And I thought, I'm always reading the ingredients for everything that I'm eating. And I'm very careful about that. I'm making sure I'm exercising. I'm doing all the things. But I've never really thought about what I'm smothering all over my body every single day. Mm. And so I was really stressed to find an answer at that point, frustrated with the lack of solutions that I had. And so I thought, I'm just not going to use my makeup for 2 weeks. I'm going to send it off to be tested and let's just see what happens. And so day by day within those 2 weeks, I felt my symptoms somewhat subside. Not 0 to 100, but somewhat subside. And by the time I reached the point in which I got the results back, they had been completely gone. Oh. And so this was like my aha moment that for me personally, I couldn't use the makeup products that I had been using. And it was even more wild of a story because it's not like I was getting these facial reactions. Like I wasn't getting a rash or anything that would make me think, oh, it's what I'm applying to my skin. Yeah. It was migraines and nausea. And so at that time, I was still young, still in college, and my thought process wasn't go start a beauty brand. It was, wow, I discovered a solution for myself. Why don't I start talking to others? And as I started talking to others, I heard stories like, oh, wow, I've had migraines for a long time, or I've struggled with X, Y, and Z. Maybe it could be my makeup. Why don't I stop using it? And it was almost this ripple effect where I started to hear more and more that was the culprit to other people's problems. And so this was almost my moment of like, okay, what is my path forward? And it was around the same time that I had newly gotten into loving Whole Foods. And so I had, before they were owned by Amazon, it was just my place to go and shop around and find good products. And it was really one of the only solutions for clean products at that time. In the makeup that they had, it's not that it wasn't clean. I mean, obviously there were varying levels of that, but it just didn't work appropriately. It didn't have good pigmentation. There wasn't like an array of colors. It was mostly like neutral browns. And I
Hmm.
just felt like, as a makeup artist and esthetician myself, I feel like mm, I want to use products that actually work, and I don't want to have to sacrifice my health for beauty or my beauty for health. I want the best of
Hmm.
both worlds. And I felt like other people will want that too.
Hmm.
And so that's when I decided, I am young, I am naive, which actually worked very well in my favor, to just go for it and to really start looking into what it would take to actually create a line. And when I had first started, people always ask me this question, like, well, how did you even create a makeup line? Where do you even begin? And I honestly just started Googling, and I found some manufacturers that were willing to do cosmetics. Most of them were skincare or soaps or, all the things. But I found a couple that were willing to do makeup. And as I started to chat with them, a few of them kind of laughed in my face. And they're like, Krysta, like, what's the point? You think people are going to be eating their makeup? And I said, well, I mean, kind of, yes. Like, people are kind of eating their makeup. Everything you put on your skin is absorbed. And
Yeah.
you know what? People might not care about this right now, but I think it's coming.
Hmm.
And so this was 2016. It was definitely ahead of its time, but really started working with the one lab that I could find that believed in the mission.
Hmm.
And that's really where it all began.
Oh, I love that. You actually do eat your makeup, like lip liner, lipstick, lip gloss, like literally you are ingesting it. But yes, what you put on your skin, 60% of it is absorbed in less than 30 seconds. And it's like, even if you just switch over one thing, I know sometimes it's so scary to switch over everything, like all my skincare, all my hair care, all my body care. And it's like, if you just switch over, let's start maybe your foundation, right? That's so many less toxins that you're being exposed to every single day for the rest of your life, you can slowly switch those over. Um, I'm curious from like a person who does not have anything to do with creating makeup, how much testing goes into that when you like, because you want it to perform, and I love your foundation. It absolutely performs. So when you give them the ingredients, you're like, well, we definitely don't want these ingredients, what's that process like of trying to get it to work?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. Before I dive into that, I do want to touch first on what you just said, which is about starting the process of getting into clean beauty. And,
Yes.
do you need to switch everything at once? And you hit, the nail on the head with that, which is you don't need to switch everything at once, but you should switch out the products you run out of when you can. And
Mm-hmm.
most importantly, start with the products you're using on the largest parts of your body. So your
Okay.
full face is covered in foundation. So absolutely switch your foundation. If
Mm-hmm.
you're using like a body wash or a body lotion, those are definitely important ones too. Deodorant, obviously, I'm sure many of you who are listening have already heard about deodorant as it was one of the first switches people started to make. But yes, I would say that you certainly want to use what you're using on the largest parts of your body and then go from there.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that you mentioned was the importance of what you're eating and what's on your lips. And so this is something that I often see that people miss, where they have like a gluten intolerance, gluten allergy, celiac disease, all of the like, and they don't think about the fact that the lip products they're using have gluten in them. And
Mm-hmm.
so they're switching all their foods, they're doing everything that they need to do. And then I come across them, whether it's at an expo or, just talking to a customer that has bought from us. And I'm like, have you thought about switching your lip products if you're not feeling 100%? And it's almost like this aha moment of like, oh, wait, I am actually eating this product and I do have to follow a gluten-free lifestyle, but I didn't think about the products I'm using. And so it's
Yeah.
very important to switch foundation if you're gluten free, especially lip products, things that you're eating. And then, of course, things that are going directly on like a mucous membrane or your eyes. So
Mm-hmm.
that's definitely where I would say start. And then to answer your second question about the testing. So I don't know how aware your audience is when it comes to, FDA approval of products, but there really isn't much regulation, which is the problem. And
Yeah.
so whether it's a supplement, whether it's a foundation, any of the like, unfortunately, there's just no one who is really monitoring it. And so I could have a bottle of formaldehyde and put it on my shelf at my store and say, this is organic. And I might not have much issue with that. No one might say anything about the fact that I'm selling a chemical under a different name. And so that's where it gets scary and you have to do your own research. However, what I will also say is that there are a lot of certifications that brands can get, like Leaping Bunny certified, which means cruelty free, or gluten free certifications, or the USDA seal, which is very hard actually to get for makeup because a lot of makeup products uses water or H2O, and
Hmm.
that technically can't be in the product to have it certified as USDA. So that, side note might
Oh,
be
I
why.
didn't know that.
But what I will also say is that these certifications are wonderful, but they're also very costly for brands. And so for
Hmm.
us, we don't have every certification that you can have, not because we don't meet the criteria, but because it's just capital that smaller brands don't have access to. And so what we've done over the years is as we've grown as a brand, we've tried to invest into the certifications that show we are what we claim to be.
Hmm.
But it really can vary from person to person and brand to brand. Some brands do start with making products in their kitchen. When I started, that wasn't something that I knew was my strong suit, and so I right away decided I want to partner with chemists and like an official lab that could actually scale, granted that we had business that that did well. And
Hmm.
so for us, that was like straight from the get go. We knew that we were working with suppliers that are EcoCert, and so that just means that it's high quality ingredients coming from like farm to table types of suppliers,
Yeah.
and so forth, to make sure that there's actual integrity of the ingredient. They're not just coming in bulk from a warehouse that we don't know where the origin of each of them are, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, that totally makes sense. So we talk about this a lot because if you have a USDA certification or any certification, that bumps up the price a lot. And
Yeah.
so it is really nice though when people can say, hey, we do meet this criteria because of XYZ, but we
Yep.
also aren't charging more because we don't have that stamp. And that is really going back to knowing your brands, like knowing the
Yep.
people behind them. And I say this a lot with farmers, like go get to know your farmers because a lot of times you can get organic grown produce without the sticker because it's like farm to table and you can talk to them about what they're using and what they're putting in their products. And um, that's why I do like smaller brands for that reason because you aren't paying for the label. So you can get it a little bit more cost effective, but then you can know the why behind it. So
Absolutely.
it's makes sense. It's so unregulated. Like it's a poop hole. Like it literally is. When you step into
Mhm.
like supplements and makeup and skincare and hair care, it's great that we can get access to all of these things. It's a double-edged sword. Like we can get access to all of these things, but um there is nobody watching out for you except for you. So really get to know these brands. Um,
Absolutely.
so could we talk about like ayz-ling Organics, like mission in terms of ingredients? What are like some ingredients that you were just like off the bat, like these cannot be in our makeup because of XYZ?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually going to start with what we wanted in it, and then I'll finish with
There
what
we
we
go.
didn't want into it. So it's obviously a toss up because you want to find ingredients that are really good, but you also want to find ones that can perform. And so for us, when we first started, I thought about the other brands that were on the market and why people feel clean products don't work well. And
Oh,
the reason
yes.
why many of them don't work well is because a lot of them are mineral based. And what that means is if you go into a lake and you scoop up a handful of rocks and you crush it down into a powder, that would be a mineral powder. And so originally when clean beauty started, you were seeing lots of powders. That's where most of the makeup lines were starting. And the issue is that if your skin isn't oily, if you don't have a foundation on first or some sort of skincare, and you go and you apply a powder, there's no vehicle to adhere it to the skin. And so as you go through your day, the powder is actually just going to fall off the face. There's no
Mm,
performance elements to it. And
yeah.
so we have gotten accustomed to reapplying things. So that's why it did last. Like people still did buy mineral products, but they just weren't getting the efficacy and performance of the other, conventional makeup lines that people were used to using. And so what we did is we said, okay, we don't want to use minerals, But we do want to find things that are still as clean, but can work really well. And for us, that was things like kaolin clay. So if you think of a clay mask, you obviously paint it on your face and it's wet, but then it hardens and it stays for a while. It's not really moving too much. And so that is the base of some of our lip products, because you're getting those hydration elements while also the performance elements of it too. So that's where we see beauty in like cross-functional herbs, or different ingredients that can kind of serve in both worlds. The same goes with aloe vera. Aloe vera is a big ingredient in a lot of our products. One, because we do have customers that have rosacea, or they are out in the sun and sometimes we'll get a sunburn, all the things that cause inflammation, sometimes acne too, and those painful pimples that unfortunately just won't calm down. With aloe vera and rosemary and thyme and oregano, you're getting the soothing properties, but you're also getting the antibacterial. And so that's why with the foundation, you can sleep in it. It doesn't make you break out. It's really such a beautiful formula for those who have sensitive skin, which are usually the demographic that starts with us, the people that can't really use anything else. And so those were the really important things for us. And leaning back onto the acne comment again, the other problem that I was trying to solve is I see so many people who break out, and then what do? They run to a drugstore, they get a foundation or a concealer, and they smother their face in it, especially young girls. And what happens is, unfortunately, those conventional chemicals are actually going to exacerbate the workout. So it's this vicious cycle of breaking out, covering it, breaking out, covering it, and you're never really getting back to that baseline. And so you don't want to forget that your products could be contributing to your breakouts. And, it's really important, if you can, to find products that don't have the chemicals that would be doing that. You don't want to just go look for a foundation that says it, can help with acne because it has salicylic acid in it. You want a product that doesn't create the breakouts to begin with and can actually soothe and hydrate and nourish the skin so that you're not getting those problems, when you start using the new product. So those were all the ways in which we are looking at how can we make sure that these herbs are functional, work really well in the product, have those high performance elements, and of course can offer skincare like benefits, not just, some coverage or some pigment. So that's where we begin on the good side. On the bad side, it's really interesting. What I will say is you can't always trust what you read. I bet you ingredients that are improved right now might not be improved in a few years. So you really want to be your own advocate for what you personally think is okay or not okay. And it doesn't mean that you need to learn every ingredient in the book, but you want to find some trusted sources who do understand ingredients, who can be like, yeah, I would trust this or I wouldn't trust this, whether it's an ingredient or it's a brand. But to give you an example, when I go back to my journey that started at Whole Foods, there were a lot of products at the time that had sodium benzoate in it as the preservative. And that was a problem. There weren't products in Whole Foods that had that. That was one of the ingredients that Whole Foods was saying, no, we don't want this ingredient in the product. But they were open to having phenoxyethanol. And so you saw a high rise of products with that preservative in it, but they were saying no to brands that had sodium benzoate, or there was like a big argument if you did have that to get into the store. Now roles are reversed. Now people are saying they don't like phenoxyethanol, and so sodium benzoate is okay. And so my point here is that if you look at all the preservatives in cosmetics, you're going to see people who think some of them are okay and some of them are not okay. But what really needs to be spoken about more is that you do need a preservative in the product to make sure that you're not getting like mold buildup or any bacteria that's going to be a lot more toxic than the preservative. And so there's always going to be that balance depending on the product of what is okay and what isn't okay. But if you see a product that's, 90% really good ingredients and then one preservative at the end, I wouldn't necessarily shy away from it. You just don't want that being one of the first ingredients in the product. And so that's kind of the way that I would look at it. But for us, again, we've still tried to shy away from those two ingredients and the big ones. I will never support like parabens. That's one that you always want to avoid. Phthalates, which are, used in like plastic products, or propylene glycol, which is like antifreeze and formaldehyde. So those are all ingredients that I'm sure you've heard of at this point. Most brands are pretty aware that consumers don't want them in them. So you'll see right on the container usually like we don't use parabens, or we don't use phthalates. So those are big
Yeah.
ones. Triclosan would be another one. But the bigger one that I think that people aren't watching out enough for at this very moment is heavy metals such as lead. And so I'm seeing lead, I'm seeing talc in a lot of products that people aren't aware of. And so if you look at the brands that are trending right now in Sephora, and you go to palettes specifically, so the powder products, if you're looking at the ingredients and one of the first ingredients is talc, that to me would be a no. And it's hard. I'm
Mhm.
not going to lie. It's hard sometimes to find products that don't contain these things. So you don't want to go full extreme, but I'll tell you that talc is a good one that you would want to avoid, because there have been lots of studies about it being contaminated with asbestos, and that's not something that you want to get into. And so I would say that's one of the more sneaky ingredients right now that people aren't hearing about. So they're not, or not hearing about as much. So they're not looking for it as attentively as they would be parabens and fragrance and triclosan and, things that have had their
Right.
time to shine now.
No, that makes sense. And what about, I think we were talking about nano versus like non-nano types of, no, I'm gonna forget the word. Um,
Particles.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yep.
I know we were talking about those before, and you want non-nano in your
You want
makeup,
not
correct?
non-nano, exactly, because non-nano particles, and just to take a step back, you're looking for these in things like titanium dioxide, iron oxides, like any of the oxides that you usually will see at, near the end of an ingredient list. You want
Mm-hmm.
them to be non-nano particles. And all that means is that the particle size is large enough that it sits right on top of the skin. It isn't absorbed by the skin. And so that is the safer way to go about things. I don't know that every brand will list whether it's a nano or non. It really depends. We obviously list that we have non nanoparticles, but you can always reach out to the brand and get clarification on that, because it is important. And, back in the days, and by days I don't mean that long ago, people were looking for like nanoparticles and microcrystals and micro beads. And,
Mm-hmm.
these are all the terms that you want to also shy away from, because they're things that clog the pores. They scratch the surface of the skin, which isn't always a good thing. And
Mm-hmm.
they're not really safe ingredients. So I would avoid those.
Yeah, that makes sense. Could
Mhm.
we touch on colors or pigments?
Absolutely.
What are they called? Whatever makes the makeup the color.
Yeah,
Um,
pigments.
because I know some people are like, "Oh, you can only use fruit juice or beets." And I'm just like, "Well, is that going to work?" So could you talk a little bit about your perspective on what you chose to pigment your products and why?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me take a step back. When I first started my journey, didn't know too much about ingredients, just started talking with labs, thought that whatever you see on the ingredient list is accurate. There is no
Hmm.
way that anything would be in a product that is not listed on the ingredient list. And unfortunately, I got a rude awakening, because when I started working with my lab, they said, Krysta, the pigments you're seeing in some of these products, there is no way it's happening in a way that's one vegan, because most lines use like crushed beetles, carmine
Oh,
as their color. So if you see carmine on anything, that's crushed beetles. Therefore, it would not be vegan. So that's one way to color. But if you're doing it, if you're looking at highly pigmented products, most of them are probably using synthetic coloring. And so they're just not telling you they're using synthetic coloring, because
yeah.
a really bold red lipstick is not getting that way through fruit juice. It's not.
Yeah.
And so that's the one thing that you want to be aware of as a consumer, is that again, things are not regulated. You can't always trust what you see on a product, but you can usually trust the face behind the brand. And so like
Hmm.
we mentioned a little earlier, find brands that you trust the brand owner of, and can answer these hard questions for you, because it's more likely that their processes are more ethical than not. But for
Hmm.
us, we use colorants that are synthetic, but they are derived from things like grapes, calcium, like different vitamins and nutrients. So there is that core being. They've just been altered in the lab slightly. They're completely safe, and that's why I like to use the name Clear Cosmetics. instead of clean cosmetics, because my whole premise is, yes, we are clean, but more importantly, we are clear, we are honest, we are telling you what's in the products and how we're making them, versus having a safe synthetic and then just not including it and being like, no, you're good, or even a not safe synthetic
Mm,
like some other brands are doing. So that's where we derive our colorants from.
yeah. No, I think that's so important because A, people can make their own decision. And I think that's where, like, when people put natural flavors and ingredients, this is where I get a hiccup with brands because natural flavors is very similar in ingredients where it can cover a multitude of things.
Sure.
And so when brands tell me exactly what's in their natural flavors, then I can make the decision whether or not I want to use them. But when
Absolutely.
they're like, oh, no, 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 it's proprietary, I'm just like, okay, then I probably don't want to use
You probably don't. And that's the
that.
thing. So many brands hide behind words that consumers, won't know or won't ask about. And I think that's the bigger problem. It's not necessarily always what ingredients people are using, it's about who can back them and tell you the reasons why they're in them. Because most consumers don't have a chemistry background. And
Mhm,
it's hard to know what actually needs to be in a formula and what doesn't. And again, the decisions behind it. So I think that that's just a really important part of the conversation that's not being discussed enough. It's more like, one side versus the other side, and there is no middle ground, versus the other part of the conversation, which is there can be safe synthetics in products that you're using. And that's okay. Like, it is okay to be okay with that.
mhm. There's similar in mattresses. There's like certain like plastics, for example, that are non-toxic and may be protective. For example, like a mattress cover. I think we covered this in an episode. If you can't switch to a non-toxic mattress, like let's start with a specific mattress cover that's going to protect you from off-gassing. But it does have a type of plastic in there, and people are typically like, no, plastic is bad. We don't like it. But I think that's where the understanding can really be helpful. So thank you for sharing that. So I would love to know where ayz-ling Organics is going. I actually found you when I was doing like my search on trying to find makeups. There's third party testing actually. You probably already know this that different people will do on makeups for PFAS. And I found you guys because you had no PFAS in your makeup. And I know that your foundation is in glass packaging, which I really like as well. So where is ayz-ling going in the future?
It's a wonderful and exciting question. As you know, we are still a small brand. We're working against the big guys, and so it's not always a quick process when you don't have the budgets that they do. But I really do believe that if you have good intentions, a good vision for the brand, and really care about what consumers care about, that will shine through in whatever happens moving forward. And so that's really where I hope that we stand out. But in terms of the products, as you already mentioned, it's really important for us to be as clean and recyclable as we can. We already have a carbon neutral program in which we are making sure that we are a net zero after all of the plastics and everything that we ship in. But what we want to do is transition most of our products to glass. I think those are maybe not necessarily safest in terms of dropping, but they are the safest in terms of maintaining the formula. And so that's just something that takes a while because you do have to get custom molds for the products. And of course, they're a bit
Mhm,
heavier and they cost a little bit more. And so that's where we
mhm.
started with the foundation, but we're hoping to eventually transition everything over to glass. In addition to that, we know that a lot of our clean beauty queens want palettes. They want eyeshadow palettes that don't have talc in
Yes.
them. And so we hear that request a lot. In addition to the fact that I have a signature liquid liner, if you can see in the video here. And so a lot
Yeah.
of people are looking for a liquid liner that can stay and obviously has those botanically based elements to it. So I would say that those two are the most important things on our roadmap. But as we can begin to expand into other product categories, we really love skincare. Obviously, there are quite a few brands doing it, but we do want to eventually master the skincare space, hopefully with things that people haven't seen before. And then last but not least, we want to be where you're shopping. And so in all the stores where
Yes.
you're going on and trying on products and being able to actually swatch them, we really do feel that that's an integrated part of the process that we're not currently in. And so we hope to expand to larger retail and really start to get some of the market share that we think that we deserve, being a key player in the natural space. And hopefully more and more people will transition over to our products from the conventionals that they use. I do weddings on the weekends. I don't know if you know that fun fact about me, but I am
Yeah.
still an active makeup artist. And I use all of our products on my brides. And if that doesn't speak to the performance of them, I don't really know what will, as this is people's most special day and a day in which they need their makeup to last all day, all night. And so, working with more makeup artists and making sure that we are part of those special moments too, and helping people feel good that at least they're using clean things if they're going to have it on their skin all day, all night, is also an important part of our steps forward.
I love that. And so I'm from the consumer side, just for instance, when you go on and you're like, I don't know what foundation, A, take the quiz, but B, like if you need to email like a picture of yourself or get the right shade, send to customer service, because I did that and that was really, really helpful. Um, and I'm not wearing foundation today. I should have. I didn't think that one through for this episode, but I do have a photo shoot the end of this week, and that is in my bag. I like tested out my like photo shoot makeup, and ayz-ling Organics foundation is going in my bag. It photographs beautifully, and it just looks like second skin. It just is very, very natural looking, but you look so glowy.
I'm so happy to hear you say that. Yes, our foundation is by far our bestseller. It's a great place to start. To answer your question, yes, please send us selfies. I spend a lot of time in our customer service portal actually matching people to products, just because as a makeup artist and esthetician, it is what I'm best at. And I can look at a picture and match you almost within seconds. And so I will be a part of that process. Feel free to reach out. But as you said, there is a quiz on the foundation product page that does say if you're curious about a shade that you can start there. So that's another place to start. But overall, if you're looking to switch to your products, one of our biggest accomplishments is launching our full face for $100 bundle, just because I continue to hear people struggle with the thought of switching everything over and it being such an investment. And so we worked hard to get our volumes up to lower our prices enough to offer something that would allow someone to switch completely for $100. So if you are wanting to
Mhm.
switch, I would say that's the best bundle to start with. But if you are going to go solo with a product, the foundation and setting powder is great as a base.
Yeah, in the switch for $100, you get I think I've tried everything. So I'm trying to like, you get the lip. I haven't tried all the colors, but the lip oils are something that when they wear off, is my biggest issue with lip oils, is that I feel like they make my lips drier, like they get flakier. And I didn't notice that with your guys's lip colors. Like when it wore off, it was just like my normal lips. And I was like, oh, cool. I can reapply. It's not like, oh my gosh, my lips are peeling. And then you just never want to put on lip gloss again because it's just this whole process.
Well, that's kind of the funny thing about lip products that there's a lot that goes into product manufacturing that I think that we as consumers don't really think about. But a lot of lip products, especially the oils, the glosses, have drying agents in it to get you to want to apply more.
Oh.
And so that is the problem. Like chapstick, if you've heard that, it is actually true that there are elements of it that will make you want to reapply because it does dry out the lips, which is counterintuitive to what it's marketed as. But yes, we don't do any of that. So we are only composed of hydrating oils that will make your lips feel good. And as you said, when they wear off, it's not a problem at all.
That's so exciting. Definitely, I'll put the link to ayz-ling Organics in the in the show notes so you guys can check that out. But where on the socials can they also find you?
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at ayz-ling Organics. It's AISLING Organics with an S. But also, if you want to follow me personally, especially on TikTok, it's Krysta Lewis. KrystalLewis. I do a lot of videos just on ingredients, why you should switch to certain products and so forth. So feel free to follow me if you'd like.
I love that. Thank you so much for hopping on.
You are so welcome. Such a joy to be here.